Hi, welcome to our seventh discussion board. Hard to believe that we've been at this already for more than a week, almost a week and a half now. Yesterday I asked kind of a broad question. What else would you like to talk about in our four remaining discussions? Now, I'm teaching a total of four courses this semester, Science Diplomacy, which is a pretty selective course for like a dozen students that are looking at how do we understand things globally in terms of science and how we use that to improve relationships among people and nations. I'm looking at a public health class which has more than 50 people in it where we're trying to understand how do we use engineering to improve health. I'm teaching an environmental design class which has about 30 people in it, and there what we're looking at is how do we design things as engineers. And then of course there's the class that's predominantly sophomores, Fundamentals of Environmental Engineering, where we're covering a broad overview. I've tried to keep this discussion board in the space where every class has the opportunity to kind of weigh in on the same question that we've talked about, our heads and our hearts and our minds, our hands, what we feel, some fun memes we've seen. We've talked about this flattening the curve. And so now the next 4 days, what I'm going to do is take what I saw as kind of the question that came from each of the four classes on Monday, and I'm going to spend some time each day talking about it and unpacking that a little bit. So today I'm going to talk about the question that came from the class on science diplomacy. I thought this was a great question. You know, there's like I said, there's about 10 people in there. They all shared some great ideas of what things they'd like to talk about, how they'd like to come about, kind of understanding something that's going on with this current virus outbreak. And one of the things that I was really struck by in the set of comments and questions from the folks in science diplomacy was basically, to summarize, is what's the end game? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Right? What's the goal we're trying to accomplish? And then we're taking some steps to accomplish it, right? So for instance, you're all in school. Presumably it's because you'd like to graduate from school. And to be able to graduate, you need to pass individual classes. And the reason why you'd like to graduate is because you'd like to go on and get a job or a better job. You'd like to earn some more money. The reason why you're taking classes is because you'd like to learn more stuff, invest in yourself. There's some purpose to what we're doing here. You're not just in school because you had nothing better to do. Well, maybe you are, but I'm guessing that most of you are in school because you have some bigger goal, right? I mean, at a minimum, you're trying to satisfy that your parents or your loved ones have encouraged you and said, I'm going to give you some wise advice. Go into school is an important thing to do. And so you said, okay, well, I'll do it because you've suggested that I should. Or you're doing it because they'll pay for it right now and you trust what they're encouraging you to do and you're going to, go down that path, right? So we're all doing things in terms of being in school because we're trying to accomplish some longer term, some bigger goal. All right, so let's, as engineers, take this as kind of a first principle. People oftentimes do things because they're trying to accomplish a longer term goal. They've got some goal in mind and they do the things to get them to that goal. Now, one, we can ask, does that always apply? Do people always do things with a goal in mind? Do sometimes people just do things because it's the next thing in front of them? Do some people not necessarily think much about the future? Yeah, that's all true. That's all true. But generally, deep down inside, most people, many people, it's a reasonable assumption to think that most people are doing things with a goal in mind. So if that's the case, well then, what is the goal in mind in our current situation? I mean, if we say, well, the goal is to flatten the curve. No, that's not the goal. I mean, that's the immediate thing. That's like saying, my goal is to get a paycheck. Well, yeah, sure. My goal is to do well on this assignment. Yeah, sure. Okay, I hear you. That's actually not really much of a goal, right? Because a goal is something that you work towards. You've got some vision of something towards something in the future. Now you might say, well, yeah, but Dan, but I can have a goal of working well on one exam so that I can do well in one course, so that I can do well in my degree, so that I can get a job. And I say, aha, there you go. Your goal was to get a job that paid well. That's actually your goal. And it's probably even bigger than that. Your goal is probably to get a job that pays well, to have a satisfying work career, to have a satisfying personal life, maybe that you share with another person, maybe that you invest in not just yourself, but also potentially into children, right? So, or that you invest into the world around you, into serving others, or that you invest into your own self-development, right? These are our goals. They're big. So then what's the goal right now? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? I mean, it feels like part of the goal is we want nobody to die. Well, I mean, here's a surprise. People die. Number one cause of death is death. That's what happens, right? You know, we get old, our bodies tend to deteriorate, and eventually death is kind of actually a normal process. It's not surprising that that's an outcome of life. So if our goal is to have no one die, well, that's an unattainable goal. So let's actually pick something that we can work on. You know, let's not pick something that doesn't have any grounding in reality. So what's our goal? To have fewer people die? Okay, that's a good goal. That's an admirable goal. So what are the things that people are already dying from? And what are we doing to try to stop that? Number one cause of death in the United States, heart disease. 600,000 to 700,000 Americans die every year from heart disease. If we want to try to stop heart disease, what can we do? Well, we could have people be younger. Okay, well, that doesn't really work. What does it look like to be younger? Well, not be so overweight. Actually exercise sometimes. Okay, so we could have a better diet. We could eat better food, we could not smoke cigarettes, we could get some exercise every day. So here's some things we could do to achieve this big goal. Number two cause of death in the United States. Again, about 600,000 people, cancer. Okay. Now, cancer is a little bit different than heart disease because cancer is actually just a breakdown of a tissue in the body where it kind of grows out of control. And so there's different cancers in the body. We don't just, we lump them all under this one disease of cancer. But the way you go about preventing lung cancer and the way you go about preventing colon cancer and the way you go about preventing brain cancer, and I mean, different cancers are in different tissues, different things affect different tissues in different ways. So we kind of have this misnomer that we're going to prevent cancer. And that's a good idea to try to prevent cancer because there's some common mechanisms underlying what is cancer. But it's actually a whole cluster of different diseases. So we could simply say, well, let's try to prevent cancers that are not very nice. Like, for instance, I don't know, let's say breast cancer that kills young mothers. So cancer in somebody who's like 35 as a mom who has 2 or 3 little kids that are going through school. Well, that's probably a pretty noble thing to go after working on, right? So we can imagine a goal. Let's address that. What are the causes of that kind of cancer and how do we address it? Does it have something to do with their genetics? Does it have something to do with their environment? Are they exposed to things? So we can address that. Now, if we're looking at the top 10 causes of death in the United States, those 2 causes, heart disease and cancer, account for more than 1 million deaths every year. And if we add up number 3 through number 10, if we take all of those other causes, the other 8, they equal about the same number of deaths. So we can account for 1 million people dying from 2 things, or another 1 million people dying from another 8 things. And the top item on that other 8 things are things like accidents. Okay, so we don't want people to die from accidents. Well, take cars off the road, because people die a lot in cars. You see where that would be kind of a silly goal? Let's eliminate cars. Well, I mean, what kind of goal is that? Let's eliminate people dying in accidents. Okay, well, how about we require people to wear seatbelts? Good goal. How about we require people to have airbags in their cars? Okay. How about we say little kids should ride in the back seat instead of the front seat? Okay. How about we enforce speed limits? How about we have roads that are designed and built properly? See, we actually spend a lot of money as a society dealing with accidents. We have insurance for accidents. We have safe vehicles to avoid accidents. We use a lot of our police force to do things that help prevent people from having accidents. So we actually spend a lot of money with the goal of reducing accidents. Let's think about number 4. Chronic lower respiratory diseases. So folks that are having problems with, breathing. Smoking is a big contributor to that. Stroke, old age, big contributor to that. Alzheimer's, old age, big contributor to that. So the idea of let's have a goal of having people not have Alzheimer's, not have strokes, not having chronic lower respiratory illnesses. Those are good goals. Let's not have people dying from those, but each of those is going to be approached in a different way. I mean, what are we going to do to stop people from having strokes? We might think about diet and exercise, but that's really around heart disease. We might think about, well, what else can you do in strokes? Well, you can help reduce, blood clots through your diet okay, but at some point in time, you might simply get old and blood vessels might simply occasionally rupture and you might have stroke. So do we stop blood from pumping because the goal is to never have a stroke? So here's the question for today in the 7th discussion board. What is the goal of what we're doing right now? Now let's move way beyond the flatten the curve, because that's an interesting goal, right? But that's like, I want to do well in this test. Let's move beyond I want people to go back to work after we flatten the curve. Well, that's kind of like doing well in this class. Let's think about a bigger goal, right? What is the end goal here? Why are we interested in public health, flattening the curve, having a healthcare system? What's the goal we're going for? So today's 7th discussion board question: what's the goal we're working towards? And how does this idea of flatten the curve or practice social distancing, how does the closing or opening of restaurants and businesses, how are these things fitting into this larger goal? Today's 7th discussion board, simple question: what is our end game? What is our goal? And then let's think about how the actions we're taking right now fit into that goal. All right, I look forward to reading what you've got posted. Thanks so much.